Are you ready to take the steps to make your next phase your best one yet? Or are you questioning, when should I retire? Now, in a few years, much later? How do I prepare for it? Emotionally, financially, physically? How do I adapt when I have worked all my life? Where will I find meaning? That is a really big one. These are just a few of the issues vying for your attention when you think of quitting your job for good. The many questions and issues can be a minefield and may paralyze you into not retiring when you can, or being fearful about how you will handle retirement when you do. If this sounds like you, stick around, because today's guest, Pauline Field, has an important and much needed message for men and women who are looking at their pending retirement and for those already retired. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ironing Out the Wrinkles. I'm your host, Ros McMaster.
And I'm your other host, Kate Shaw. Together we're taking the age out of ageism, helping men and women embrace a second stage of life with less fear. Pauline is a highly sought after coach and has a gift of being able to listen to where you are, where you hope to go, and helping you see the path to get there. Having retired 3 times, from a career in management, consulting, from a job as a business manager in a medical research department, and from the non-profit that she started, Pauline has experienced the highs and lows of the golden years. Pauline says many are just waiting to retire so they can turn off the alarm, play tennis, take care of their grandchildren, travel and relax. What they don't realise that it all gets old after a while and they find themselves asking, now what? Is this it? There's a lot they can do, but they haven't yet thought it through though, because they didn't know what they would face when they would face this problem.
Pauline, hello and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with the both of you.
So we opened up with some big questions that people ask themselves when they're ready to retire. And we're going to get you to unpick those for us, but please first share with us some of the background on your big career and what led you to specialising in helping other women with this transition. So, and I'll say at the outset, you specialise in helping women, and you'll explain that to us later, but men are also, as you know, having the same issues, so we're not including them in this discussion.
Absolutely. Men and women both have this problem with retirement and what to do about it. It is a very big transition. As you mentioned, I've retired 3 times. And the first time was from my major career, which was in management consulting. And I spent over 30 years in that. And when I retired, I'd really, although I loved my career, I was ready to be done with it. But pretty soon I was like, okay, well, I'm too young. What am I going to do? And so I took a job. That was the medical research company. And that was like a vacation because with the consulting, I had my own company and it was very successful. So my time wasn't mine. This way I could go to work, do my job and go home. It was wonderful. I did that for 10 years, then I retired from that. And in the meantime, I had started this nonprofit to empower women as leaders. And I had done that part-time while I was consulting and then at the other job. But then now I was retired again, I said, okay, I'm going to put everything into this. And I did it full-time for a little over 4 years. And I retired from that partly because of COVID. A year before I retired, I got COVID. And although it took me down for about 3 weeks, when I was able to then work after that, it turned out I had long COVID. And so I wasn't able to keep up the amazingly frenetic pace that of before. and it was terrible. It was clear that I couldn't do the job, and so I had to let it go. I gave the board 6 months, and I said, "Okay, you got to replace me in 6 months, and I'm out of here." And not an easy decision, but one that had to be made. And so then I retired for the third time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, because that was all working with women, in the nonprofit, when it came to uh, helping other women with the transition to retirement, I had a colleague that I coached into retirement. And when I was still looking at exactly what I was going to do, she said, "You are so good at this. You should do this. There's lots of other people out there that need you." And I thought, that sounds really good. And so that's how this started.
So it's the blessings in awful times sometimes, aren't there? Yes.
Yeah,
Well, that
really.
brings me to the big question. Knowing if retirement is for you, like maybe we should just get clear first exactly what is the definition of retirement, because I think it's different for all of us, isn't it?
Yes. There really is no definition for retirement other than the traditional one, which is you quit work and you sit and do nothing for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And but the thing is that when that was the norm, it was we weren't going to live that long. Our life expectancy was much less. So when we quit work, we had, a few years. So why not make the most of it? Well, today, because we live into our 80s and 90s on a regular basis, sometimes even over 100, there's a lot of years to be looking at. And it's fine to be playing with the grandkids and traveling and playing pickleball and all those other wonderful things that you just haven't had time for. But uh, it really uh, once you get past that, then there's this gaping hole, if you will. And so for people to look at retirement, some people can't look past that. It's like all they can see is, I won't have to get up. I won't have to look at that supervisor one more day or deal with one more client. It's like they just can't get past that. And that's fine. But if you don't plan ahead, then sometime in that first year or two, that's when you're going to have to look at it, because at some point it will come up as now what? What else is there? There's got to be something else.
Yes, and all those options you mentioned, even with the grandkids, that's great while they're young. But at some point, the grandkids reach an age where they don't really want anything to do with you anymore. And even, my husband was in the financial planning industry and he was, transitioning to retirement, and he thought he would play golf 4 days a week because he was a keen golfer. But he had scoliosis, so he couldn't play golf 4 days a week. It was very painful on his back. So, and they did studies actually in the financial planning industry that men in particular, when they retired, if they didn't have hobbies already in the background, they were spending up to 80 hours a week watching television.
Isn't that a waste?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know a few men like that who don't know what to do, their job is their life.
So,
Right. And I think it can be harder for men because as women we generally have more friendships, and we know how to develop friendships easier than men. Men rarely have friends, and if they do, they might have one, they might have two, but then life comes up, and friends move away, and they die, and so on. So for men, retirement can be really, really tough. It's interesting you said that about the finance industry. A couple who we're friendly with, he's been retired for I think 10 or 12 years, and he was a police officer, and he does nothing but sit in front of the TV.
Mm.
And, it's like, so it's very tough. It's very tough. And so some planning ahead of time is really important. And one of the things about hobbies or things that you want to do, if you don't have to work when you're retired, then what you want to be doing before you retire is to look at, okay, what do I enjoy? What could I spend my time on? And start thinking about it beforehand and try it out. Uh, you know, um, the things like tennis and golf are things that, yeah, we there's a good chance we're not going to be able to play as much as we would like to once we're retired, for health reasons,
A
as
good
you
old
said.
body.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
knowing
Yeah.
when to retire then, how do we know
Yeah.
when to retire?
Yeah. When to retire is one of the biggest ways to look at that is the financial side. Because if you don't look at the finances, you could, you know, think you're all set. But if you haven't spoken to somebody who is a professional, a financial professional, then you could run out of money or just, not have enough to support the lifestyle that you would want. So, I just read an article today that said retire earlier rather than later. Well, that's fine if you can do that, but many people cannot.
And
Uh,
things are getting dearer and dearer, aren't they? Expenses in life are getting more so, aren't they, as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing that I learned back in my 50s is that you, if you retire when the economy is down, you're going to do much worse financially than when it's on an upswing.
Mm.
So that's something else to consider. That if you are still a number of years out from your retirement, then look at, all right, well, the economy is not doing so great now, and it's kind of volatile, but eventually it'll come back up. I mean, we expect it to come back up. So when it does come back up, maybe that's the time you want to be thinking about. But the sooner you can plan your finances and get in touch with a professional, the better. I
Ah,
can't emphasize that enough.
super advice.
Yeah.
Super advice. So, well, that sort of answers the question too. When is a good time to retire? Now, in a few years, much later? It
Just got to be
really depends on
prepared.
what's going
Yeah.
on in the moment,
Right.
doesn't it?
But what about
Yeah.
those unexpected things? Sorry, like retrenchment.
Yeah. And that happens. Some people retire and then it's like, oh dear, all my retirement money went bust. And it could be from something like a scam. There are so many fraudulent people out there doing nasty things. So there's lots of ways that it could force you back into work. And uh, the the thing is, when you're working at a retirement age, there's lots of options. You can do what you've always done, but most people don't want to do that. You could look at, okay, is there a part of what I used to do that I enjoyed? If there is, like, I did consulting, and part of my consulting was coaching. Well, I'm not at all interested in coaching businesses anymore, but the coaching of the people I love. So that's the piece I took.
Mm.
It could be that there's always been something that you want to do. I met somebody the other day who her career has been in singing. And when she was a teenager, her mother said, okay, you're a great athlete and a good singer. You get to pick. Which one are you going to pick for your career? And she chose singing. Well, recently, when she decided she, didn't want to sing anymore after 40, 50 years, she went and got her credentials and became a yoga teacher.
Mm.
Fabulous. It's creative thinking, isn't it?
It is. And another woman, she uh, she was a graphic artist all her career, but she's really a fine artist. So now she took some lessons, which she enjoyed, and she made some art and has been selling it, and so is just so happy. So there's lots of things you can do without being back in the grind, where it's like, oh no, I've got to
Yes, we had another guest that was talking about when you retire and you think, what am I going to do now? What am I passionate about? And you don't want to be associated with the skills that you used in your career. He said you go back and look at the strengths that were innate to you in your childhood. And it sounds that's exactly what you're describing now. You're a natural teacher and coach that's innate to you. So, and your friend, she went back to the sport that was innate for her.
exactly,
So, yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we've all got things in there that we can bring them out. And there's so much opportunity out there today. There really is. And it doesn't have to be, just the same old straight line that we've had in careers.
Yeah. So, how many times should we think about retiring?
Well, I think that really is, um, something new that's come up. That's not the same as it was years ago. Instead of just, okay, I'm retired, period. It's like, okay, I'm retired, but no, I'm going to go back and do this, or I'm going to go off and do that. But then, yes, a few years down the road, you might say, nah, I've had enough of that, and you
Mm.
retire from that. Or you can't do it anymore for some reason. Okay, great. So I'll retire and look and see if there's something else. So there are, the traditional boundaries are just not there anymore. We really can um, design our retirement however we want to.
Mm.
So retiring once, twice, 10 times, hey, go for it.
So you're saying also we've got to prepare for it, but there's three kind of areas. Your physicality, so it's important to keep fit, I guess. Finances you've talked about, and the emotions. I loved reading your website. It was a mine of information. I love it. Thank you. And you were saying there's an inner voice that a lot of us don't listen to.
Oh,
So how do we
absolutely.
prepare for it?
Yeah. Well, let's take the easy one first, the physicality. And really there's our bodies and our living space, both. So to prepare for both of them, first of all, if you're not in shape, get in shape. Because as we age, things come up. Our body says, you're not 25 anymore. So if you can get in better shape, then you're going to be much better shape to continue that. And and it's something that needs to be continued. So getting into a routine now of physical exercise is a good thing. And then our living space, whether you're going to stay in the home that you're now in, or if you intend to downsize or move across country or to a different country or whatever, there's just a million different options. Then it's time to declutter and to look at what can I let go of. One of the things that I hear often is that my kids don't want my stuff.
Mm.
So, the things that we hold dear, it's like, yeah, if there's a few things that you really love, keep them, enjoy them. But all that other stuff, get rid of them. That way, your kids don't have to get rid of it when you have to move into something even smaller. So,
Yes, it's dead weight, isn't
definitely,
it? I
yeah.
have a philosophy about clearing out the clutter, and it's not just about the physical space around you. When you have a big clean out like that, it clears the emotional, mental space as well.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. So, which brings me to the third one of the emotional preparedness, which is, and you said financial too, didn't
Yes,
you?
you did
Yeah,
sort of
Yeah.
talk
you
about
covered
that.
that a
You
bit.
said
Yeah.
that, yeah.
But I think we've covered that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the emotional is what we usually avoid, even more than the physical. And we really need to go inside. We really need to take the time and to look at, who am I? What do I value? And also, what are my gifts? Maybe you're a wonderful gardener. Maybe you're a wonderful listener. Maybe you're a wonderful artist. Whatever your gift is, or gifts plural, you want to look at that and own it. And that's one of the things to do, is to really look inside, because this is the thing about retirement, is it's your time. You've done the responsibility thing. You've lived your life. You've had your career. If you've had kids, you've raised them. They're grown and gone. Now it's you. It's time for you. So taking the time to look, often we spend less time planning our retirements than we do from a weekend away. And that's just not a good idea. It's worth taking the time. It really is.
I think a lot of people struggle too with that emotionally, because they've identified with the label that they had while they were working.
Doctor.
So suddenly it's like, well, I don't have as much value anymore. It's like, when women started going into the workforce and going to universities and having careers, and suddenly women who were staying at home to look after the family were feeling left out and making excuses and being embarrassed about the staying at home to be a mum. Such an important role, and how lucky they were if they could do that. But now when we're finishing work, it's like, no one's going to value me anymore. But that's an internal concept. Nobody really cares as much about you as what you think. So
yeah, no, you bring up, that's so good, because over the years when I've given speeches and presentations, particularly with the nonprofit, if I talk about women and being leaders and so on, if there were homemakers and housewives in the audience, there'd always be one who either would speak up or would come to me afterwards and say, there's nothing wrong with being a mother and a homemaker. And it's like, oh, my dear, there is absolutely nothing wrong. And it's just too bad that you're made to feel like, there's something wrong with you because you weren't out beating the bushes in a career. So
I've met that many women as well. I mean, I know when my kids were often off, I had to go back to work. I'd lost all my confidence. And I think a lot of people do lose their confidence when they're either retired and want to go back to work, or they've lost their job. They just feel like they don't forget they're special and unique. They just feel like they're nothing special.
that's right. That's right. And we're all special. We're all unique. And we do all have gifts. And, some people love to make people laugh. That's a gift. And, there's somebody I know who just finds people to help, just makes them dinner or takes them to the doctor or just because that's who she is. And she finds meaning in that. And, so it hasn't got to be big.
Now,
This
little
is the
things
time
mean a
now.
lot. Yeah. Little things do mean a lot. I agree with you.
They do. They do. And sometimes playing a game, we had a neighbor who, before she moved into an assisted living community, she was 102 by the time she left. Yeah. And she was going and playing cards. I forget whether it was poker or some other game, but she loved her card games. And she made people feel happy when she was around them, because she was so she was a happy person, and she loved her cards, and she, just had a great time. And so, it can be anything. There's no right way.
Mm. Yeah. So adapting when they've worked all their lives.
That's a
Yes,
big thing.
That's a really big
Mm.
one. Yeah. How do
it is.
people adapt?
Yeah. And, for some people, it's easier than others. So for homemakers and housewives and mothers, they often find it easier. For people who've had their own business, uh, or who have been freelance, often find it easier because they're used to adapting.
Mm.
But when you've been in a job, whether it's with one company or with several companies, but that's been your job for 30, 40 years, that's the hardest, because it really then, it is like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it
how,
would be.
yes. And
Yeah.
so adapting to it's really, it is a process. And that's why, there are these phases of retirement. And the first phase is before you retire, is looking at, who you are, what you enjoy, what you like to do, what your values are, so that you can begin to think about, well, what if I didn't have a job to go to every day? What would I enjoy doing? And so that's the first phase. And then the next second phase is that honeymoon phase, when, you're not having to get up with the alarm. And then after that, then that second phase, that honeymoon phase, some people think, oh, it'll take a few weeks. No, it can take a year or two, to really come down, and to start to look at, okay, well, who am I? How do I adapt? And the most important thing is to have people around.
Mm.
That is critical. Loneliness and isolation is worse for your health than smoking.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I can
It's
believe that.
it's almost a grieving process that they can
Mm.
be going through, isn't it? And
Yes,
that takes time. But yeah,
it does.
loneliness, epidemic. My children and I were out to dinner last night actually, and we were talking about the loneliness epidemic.
Mm.
Even young people are
Yeah.
experiencing it
COVID started
like
that, didn't
never
it?
before, or
Yeah,
even
yeah,
before that.
yeah.
You know,
It's all
it
computers and then
breaks
their
my
Right.
iPad.
heart.
Yeah.
Mm.
Even babies, I notice, are on their iPads.
Oh,
It's really sad. But one thing
Oh,
I
I know.
wonder, look, what happens if you suddenly find yourself wake up one day and go to work and then they don't want you anymore and you haven't prepared for it, either because of
Right.
your age or because the company's gone broke and suddenly you've got no job. What
mm.
do you do?
Yeah. I know of a company that did just that. And there was one woman, when they said, okay, you got early retirement, and she says, yep, she was ready. She was off and running, and fine. But then I know two of the other women who were devastated, absolutely devastated. One woman wasn't prepared, period. And the other person was prepared, but she was prepared for, I think it was 3 or 4 years down the road. And it made a big difference. And they both, uh, the grieving process was a difficult one, because it wasn't their choice.
Mm.
When you're suddenly, okay, that's it, we don't want you anymore, you clear out your desk, tomorrow you won't be here, you'll be retired. It's like, that's not, it really is like grieving the loss of a person. It's
Mm.
it's it's just as bad, because it's unexpected, and it's a break in what we know about how our lives should be going. And so before you can get into the regular retirement thinking, you first got to deal with that. and that can take a long time. One woman I know, one of those two, it took her 2 years before she could even start to think about, okay, so retirement, what am I going to do? Yeah. The other one, it was a little quicker actually, but
Yeah, actually, it's, you know, official retirement age is generally in the 60s, you know, if you
right.
sort of think about timelines that government sets. But transitional points actually start for people moving into the second phase of life starts in the 50s, sort of menopause and beyond. So would you say, you know, round that period of time is when you should maybe start thinking about what your plan might be, you know, so that
Yes,
you are ready for the unexpected?
right. Yes, I would say mid-50s is the perfect age to start thinking about it. And one of the problems is that uh, until you're actually in retirement, you don't know that it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a lot in the media or in the culture in general to say planning for retirement is a good thing and is a necessary thing. So, uh, it's one of the reasons I, try and shout it as far and wide as I can to bring it to people's attention to say, yeah, it's something that you got to look into and you got to deal with beforehand so that it can be joyful rather than, oh my goodness, this
I
is
know a few
terrible.
people who think, "Oh my goodness," some people very close to me as well. But yeah, it's a real challenge transition, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
So I know you talked to Pauline about there being special challenges, unique challenges for someone who's single. And there's different challenges for men as opposed to women too, I think, isn't there? Do you want to spend some time talking about those differences?
Sure.
Single people and men versus women?
Yeah. Well, for single people, and particularly single women, they've the financial can be one big issue because we've earned less over the course of our career, so we probably have less pension, less savings, less social security. Um, so there's less money to retire with. So that's one thing. Uh, then there's for women who have, either always been single or been single for a long time, they're used to being single. So that's not necessarily a challenge. But for a recently divorced or widowed uh, woman, uh, then you've got the added thing of, okay, well, who do I do things with? And particularly if your most of your social connections have been at work, and now you're not working. Now what? You know. So that's again so critical because of isolation and loneliness being so detrimental to your health, both physical and mental. With men, the because of the lack of friendships, close, intimate friendships that most men don't have, which is so different than women. The One of the biggest challenges is, okay, who do I do things with, and how do I not be on my own? And particularly if they are widowed or divorced, if they're single, then it's doubly critical because otherwise they'll sit at home and watch TV and
Mhm.
do whatever on their own. And there are just so many sad stories of men who go downhill very quickly.
Mm. You were saying even in your coaching sessions, you focus more on women because women tend to share more
Men are very
about their
private. Yeah.
experiences within the groups when men aren't there. Yeah, they
Right,
feel freer
exactly,
to express.
exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, even in the past, I've done groups for different things, and men don't like to be in a group, and mostly because they don't want to share in a group. I have always worked just one-on-one with them. Yeah.
But the issues are the same. Isn't that funny? I remember when I was younger, though, men used to say they liked sitting around women at the dinner table and what have you when we were out because they enjoyed listening to women's conversation.
Do they?
Which
How
is funny,
lovely.
yeah. That was the only way to find out what was going on because men didn't talk about anything
Yeah, I've heard
real
that.
generally.
No, they just keep it. You know, I've actually said to my husband, "How's so and so, and how they're coping after the death of their friend or wife, whatever." Oh, we don't talk about that. We just say you're doing okay, and then we'll talk about safe things like the football and things like that because I don't want to upset their friend. It's so sweet, but yeah, they're just
That's why, yeah, there's so much loneliness, I think. No one's connecting, no one's being honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so finding meaning after retirement. We were kind of it's all linked, isn't it? We're sort of covering a
It
lot of
is.
that in what we're talking about already anyway. So
It's not something
yeah.
I'm getting from this that it can actually be one of the most exciting times of your life if we prepare for it.
Yeah.
Or even if I'm not very good at preparing, I don't even want to retire, but one day I'll probably have to, even though I'm nearly 70. But I like to be involved. But the thing is, you're saying that we can reinvent ourselves all the time as you did. 3 times you've retired and not to be afraid of it and that there is purpose out there and just go for it, even in small
Absolutely.
steps. Mm.
Yes, because it's so important to find meaning. Uh, sitting in front of the TV or even just sitting and reading a book doesn't give you meaning. Uh, I people come to me and say who are retired. It's like, okay, what do I do? I don't have any meaning in my life. It's not fulfilling. I'm crabby. It just if you don't have meaning, and it could be that if there isn't a financial issue, then what there is to do is to go volunteer. There
Mm.
are a gazillion organizations. One of the places we used to get volunteers from um, for the nonprofit was an organization called Volunteer Match, which is online, and it's all over the world. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of opportunities. So whatever your interest is, whether it's in kids or dogs or whatever, mentoring, you can find something that would suit you in either online or in person, whatever you want. And that's a good way to find some meaning in your life. And you don't have to do it full time either. It
No.
could be that you can find something to do 1 day a week or 3 hours a week. And it's enough to anchor your whole week.
Yeah, and be prepared to experiment a little bit, I think too. I met another woman who she lost her job and her marriage and her home all about the same time when she was in her 50s. But she just started doing workshops and things that, at first she was just looking for things to do, but she did a workshop on being a stand-up comic, and she only did it because a friend of hers was running the course, so she thought, why not? And it turned out she had a real talent for being a stand-up comic. So it's a case of experimenting until you find something. Sometimes, if you can't work it out, just do it. And as a lot of our other guests say, be prepared to be uncomfortable for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
And take a risk.
Yeah.
Take a
No, I
risk.
love
Yeah.
that. It often is that you really don't know. When I was, after I'd given my resignation to the board, I had 6 months. I gave them 6 months to replace me. Well, in that 6 months, I thought about 3 different things that I thought I might want to do.
Gee, 3.
And I tried one of them, which was a form of business consulting. And it's like, I do not want to get back into this. So that just got wiped out pretty quickly. But, it was on my list. So I tried it. It's like, no. And then the next thing, I was fascinated by all things to do with crypto, cryptocurrency, and also the technology behind it, the blockchain, and what it's being used for in industry and so on. And so I started a lot of research. I started a blog, because nobody else that I knew anything about it or understood it. It's like, okay, well, I'll learn and I'll pass it on. And so that was a lot of fun, actually, but I knew it wasn't going to last. It was just like, okay. And then this thing, as I said, I helped out somebody, I coached them in retiring, and she suggested I do that. And it was like, bingo, there it is. So just like your friend who went to, the comedy, the stand-up comedy, it's like, yeah, try some things, put some ideas down on paper and try them, and don't worry about it. Some of them will fail, but eventually you'll find something that's like, oh, this is, and I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Do you think
perfect.
also your friends or family, if you're stumped and you don't know what on earth I'm going to do, other people see things in you that you don't see in yourself, don't they? So
Yeah,
it's a safe place to ask them what they like, they think your talents might be, and you might get a shock.
yeah, absolutely. And to be open to it. If you're going
Yeah,
to ask them, be open to what they say. Don't immediately say, oh, I could.
yeah. Well, that's what I did. I've done that. Yeah. Ross proved me wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Take a
because
risk.
right. Yeah. And like any brainstorming session, the trick of brainstorming is to write everything down and to not judge anything that comes up, because somewhere in there is some gold. And if you keep shutting things down, you'll never get to the goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Pauline, that has been absolutely fabulous. Is there anything that we've left out that we could help people with retirement? We're going to ask you to run through what services you have to offer. But is there anything else, major that we need to cover?
Um, well, I guess the only thing is that well, actually, two things. One is where you're going to live is very important. And for every option, you have to ask yourself why. So if you want to stay in your home that you've lived in for 30 years, why? If you want to downsize, why? If you want to live near the grandkids, why? If you want to go to a warm climate because you've always been in a cold climate, why? That one little word can reveal just tons of things that will make you realize that you're making a great decision or you're avoiding a very bad.
That's
The
excellent
other one
advice.
is that if you're not single, if you do have a partner or a spouse, it's very important to communicate well about retirement. Often, one half of the partnership will retire before the other one. So if you have a spouse that's already retired, well, if you retire or when you retire, what's that going to do to the equilibrium in the house? Or if you really want to move somewhere else and they want to stay where you are, what's that going to do? So there's lots to talk about. And the more you talk about it, the better. And so very, very important to do that. And I can't emphasize enough the question of who are you going to do things? What's going to be your social circle, your tribe, if you will? Whether it's a small group of 2 or 3 or 4 people or a larger group, doesn't matter. But there needs to be a few people that that you can call on, that you can do things with, that you can laugh with, and so on. Very, very.
Wonderful words of wisdom.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much for sharing.
Yeah.
So, what services do you have on offer, both in person and online? Because we're in Australia, of course, but
We're all over the world though, too. Yes, so
Right. Mostly I work online. Um, occasionally I will work in person, but mostly online.
Oh,
And my premium coaching is the one-on-one coaching, where I'll work with somebody on in a customized way and paced according to how quickly or slowly they want to go, and to really have them design their retirement. And so that's what I do one-on-one. Then I have groups called Feisty and Fearless Over 50 circles,
I like that.
and and that is for women only. And we meet twice a month, and each month is a different topic, the kind of things we've talked about today. And then we also have a Facebook group that is only open to members who are either getting the one-on-one coaching or the group coaching. Then we also offer bonus sessions where I interview uh, experts. So we've got a couple of financial wealth managers coming up that I'm going to be interviewing. We've got somebody who did house sitting for 12 years all over the world before she found Portugal to retire to.
How that'd
And
be interesting.
yes, it's fascinating. And then somebody else who her and her husband retired to Mexico, and the joys of moving from her perspective. And then we're going to have an attorney talk about wills and trusts. So, and there's going to be a whole lot more, but that'll give you a sample of some of the bonus sessions we throw in.
that's fabulous. That's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so you kind of just gave us some wonderful words of advice and wisdom. Have you got
Just one sentence.
just one sentence or something about, retiring and planning for retiring?
Yes, it's never too late and definitely not too early to plan and design your retirement rather than have it be by default.